Okay, got it.
Yeah, and anyone can ask, sorry to interrupt, anyone can ask their question by chat if they want to as well. I won't say their name.
Okay, this is something that I will try to be brief. I'm not that good at that, but
Okay, take your time.
as you know. Anyhow, one of the things that always comes up for me, and it came up while you were talking today, is I get it that I'm not in control of anything and all that, but somehow like you had an awakening and then you went to medical school and then you went to residency and you became a doctor and all that stuff. How does that happen if you're seeing it from that you're not causing anything to happen? Because I'm in a period of my life where I have a lot of things that I have to create, but I also know I'm not doing it. So I don't know. I hope that question makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense for sure. The first I want to just say that the principle of non-doership or non-agency until it's realized is really can only just be a principle. Our mind will not, even after it's realized, the mind just cannot, it doesn't get that. The mind is kind of like a hammer and everything's a nail. It's a doer and everything's something it does. It just doesn't perceive reality that way. Like the thought system does not perceive reality in that way. But what's really strange about it is when it becomes clear, it's even more strange that you used to see it that way, as if I'm an agent interacting with the world, constantly making it do what I want it to do. It just seems so obviously not like that. But so then, well, what is it like? Well, I would say I can give you a few different examples of it. So one is anyone who's, say, gone through labor or had a baby or something like that. You just know that what's happening here is just completely beyond your control. It's the physiology of it, the pain, the emotions, everyone's response around you, all of the things that are going on, that baby's coming and there's nothing that's going to stop that from happening. You know, it's like the physiology takes over. That's one example. Or another example is like, if you just sort of think back on your life, do you really feel like you chose each person that you met in your life and chose that person's going to affect you in the very profound ways that they did affect you? The friendships, all of these things, does it really seem like you were the architect of all of that, of how those, could you have ever imagined when you bumped into somebody the first time that either I'll be very close friends with this person, I'll become their lover, or I'll just never see them again? Were you really aware of that, or were you not? And then if you were, or if you did have an inkling that, okay, I really connect with a certain person, could you have ever possibly had any inkling of all of the subtle ways in which they're going to affect your life and you're going to affect their life? And then the outside sort of conditions and serendipities that created whatever the storyline of your life is. Most of us can kind of see, yeah, okay, I guess in that sense, like when I kind of take a 30,000-foot view of things, it seems a little preposterous to think that I'm really in control of all the details of everything in the way my mind wants to feel like it is. So that's one approach to it. Another way of saying it is, if you sort of think back on moments in your life when there was a very profound, undeniable knowing of presence, of things almost slowing down to a stopping, or just being incredibly, extraordinarily clear and flowing and intimate. Were those the times you felt like you were in control and making decisions and planning your life and thinking of the future and thinking of the past? Or were those times when those faculties actually came to a standstill because you were so in awe of just the majesty of life itself, of sensation, of sound? And that gives you a sense that presence, as it deepens, really starts to feel like that. Even when there is activity and movement, it still feels like that depth of wonder. So those are some sort of ways you can jar the mind or the mental process into kind of tasting it or getting a sense of what that might be about. But very specifically, what I can tell you, it's like is it's actually quite simple. Uh, there's just a self-responsive flow of appearance, and that the sounds, the sensations, the feelings, the movements, nothing can really pull those apart. They're not distinct experiences, and they're actually not in space. They're not at a distance or close or far, intimate or less intimate. These are all just descriptors and words, but the actual experience of this flow, it really has no boundaries. It has no specific center. Um, and it also is not acting upon anything because it doesn't have parts. So seeing so clearly, there's nothing it can act upon. It only acts upon itself in a sense. And out of that self-responsiveness, everything arises. All the sensations, the movements, the body mind gets up and walks across the room. There doesn't have to be planning for that. It's something that's just happening. It's just evolving. It's just flowing. What I find actually gets in the way of the clear knowing of that isn't so much complex situations in and of themselves, uh, complex planning situations and vocation and work. It's not that, I don't think it's the nature of the complexity of those situations that actually puts us in our head, let's say, or makes us feel like the one that has to be the doer. I think it's actually fear of failure, fear of not knowing what to do, fear of looking like you don't know what you're doing. Those are actually the things I think that tend to put us up in our head, and those involve often groups of people, situations where people tend to be stressed, and that sort of thing. So what I find more and more as everything evolves is that it doesn't really matter how complex or simple a situation is. The experience of non-doership is pretty darn clear, actually. And even to say that there's no decisions, that there's no choice, isn't quite right, because it's not really like there's no choice. It's just that there's no choice maker. The whole experience, the whole flow itself makes the choices. It just comes out of nowhere. It might come out of your mouth, and it may come out of someone else's mouth. It may come out of just the flow of experiences, but the changing and the morphing and the evolving of a moment into nothing else specific, because it's not going anywhere. It's just evolving into itself, but it happens spontaneously, and it can happen through conversation, through voice, through movement, through all the different experiences. But it's making its own choices. It's as if the environment makes a choice. So conventionally speaking, there's actually no reason to point this out to overemphasize it. Let's say some types of spiritual teaching or pointing, like Neo-Advaita, tends to point this out, uh, really emphasize it. In my opinion, maybe a little overemphasize it, the non-doership aspect. And the reason I think it can be overemphasized is because you can actually adopt it as a belief. You can very much feel like a doer, like an agent, like, more importantly, not like a doer and agent, but like someone who's struggling and suffering, someone who's acting against their environment or acting not in accord with the environment, which is the normal state of the human experience. And you can feel like that, and then just sort of believe, oh, well, there's no doer, there's no, and then you kind of can use that to, like, I don't know, take attention off yourself, or not take responsibility for something or whatever. So I usually just sort of defer to the realization process itself, and at some point it just becomes obvious. But it's not necessarily a principle that I think you have to investigate directly necessarily. It's more of a side effect of mind identification, that it seems like I'm the doer that has a lot of responsibilities to do and manage and push and pull and struggle. Those are all sort of side effects of the whole mechanism, in my experience. Is that helpful?
It's helpful. I mean, I think what happens is that ego says it's all going to be a mess. And so the fear comes up of, like, going forward with this process because it's all going to be a mess or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
If you're not in control of it.
Totally. I get it. What I will say is just observing human nature and the sort of different circumstances people find themselves in. Actually, I think the more of that fear of failure, the fear of disorganization, the more of that's actually around, I think in some sense, the more dysfunctional people can become, till there's just so much fear, they just become disorganized. They self-doubt constantly, self-sabotage, like that kind of, it's really sad and tragic, because that's really based on a lot of repressed emotion, probably an emotional landscape someone grew up in, and so forth. We all know this struggle and this fear, but yeah, if it gets to the extreme, it can be pretty much debilitating, which is really kind of tragic. So thank you for your question.
Thanks.
Okay, let's see what else we got. Rolling up here, we got Felipe. Okay.
Thank you very much. Let me apologize beforehand. English is not my first language, and I'm actually quite nervous. Talking to someone who is liberated is basically my version of a rock idol. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to express myself very clearly, but in your book, there are many excellent analogies, but one that is very clear for me is the simplest one you do about awakening, which is first quoting Matrix and exemplifying Matrix, and then using the VR headset example. And one amazing phrase you say is that after you take out the VR headset and you notice everything was just a simulation and the thing you thought you were was not what you actually were, the moment you put the VR back on, there is a story inside of the VR set about how you took it off. And I think because my awakening experience came under entheogenic use, it's even more so applicable than regular people to this analogy. And it's quite, my problem, maybe it's quite contrary to what Miss Michelle was talking about. After I put the VR set back on, many of the insights just showed themselves very clearly to me. For example, the idea of choosing, even though the illusion of free will is still there, it's so clear to me that there is no choice, that I rest myself in the feeling that it's just about finding out, right? I discover whatever it is that this mind says is the most important thing, and I allow myself to do it. But I think there is a catch-21 there, which is because I achieved what Kensho or Satori or whatever, under those circumstances, I believe I lack more than the regular person the skills to bring myself to a state where I can remind myself of it by taking the VR headset off. So I just stay with my memories of what happened most of the time. And I believe what is happening here is that even though I know there is no choice, I look at myself sometimes, and even though, yes, following this path is the most important thing to me, there is the procrastination and the ego maybe desperately trying to see, but it's so interesting to see such and such videos on YouTube or whatever. And I see myself allowing myself to feel like the thing I most want to do is just to procrastinate. But that is not true. So there comes this frustration that is not truly a frustration because there is no one to be frustrated at. But it ends like, I believe, well, now directly my question, sorry for taking so long, is about what I believe is my problem, which might be shadow work. I don't remember if in your book you ever took directly to shadow work. And I would like to ask if there is any direct advices you can give to someone in my situation. Thank you, and sorry for taking so long.
No, you did fine. First of all, your English is great. Had no problem whatsoever understanding, and you articulated everything well. The other thing I want to say is, and this is in all honesty, what you just verbalized very clearly is what I would call the post-awakening no person's land. Everyone goes through this. Everyone goes through it. It's like confusing as shit. It's weird and paradoxical, but it's also confusing. Like what? Like why is it? Like part of you just knows it's totally okay. You got to go through all this. I mean, everything you said is just right on the money. You've got to go through all this. You've got to go through the pain. You've got to go through the confusion. And at the same time, you're like, why am I resisting it? I know not to resist it. I know, and then the resistance has to come up, and then you're like, oh, I have to resist it. Oh, I see, because I'm not apart from resistance either. Oh, okay. And so it's this very strange place, kind of between two worlds. It's perfectly lawful. This is how it goes, really. It really, really is. So I want you, first of all, first message I want to give you is I admire you for what you're doing and what you've done. The second message I want to give you is be kind to yourself. Really, it takes time, it takes patience. You're doing what I can tell. Your heart is so in this, and that's awesome. It just takes time, man. You gotta just work through this stuff. You're doing the shadow work. You're already doing it. I can feel it. I can tell by what you said and how you asked it. You're right on the money with all this stuff. If there's one guiding principle I'll give you, it's just patience. in one sense, there's nothing more frustrating than tasting eternity, and then tasting it every once in a while, but having zero control over when you taste it again or how long you'll taste it or whether you're going to taste it permanently, or it's like one of the most frustrating things, right? It's something you can't even know that kind of frustration until you've had an awakening. So everything you're going through, dude, I've been through it all. It's like, I get it. I've been through it. I've been through it with other people. It's just how this goes. In the book I mentioned, I used the phraseology after awakening, after all the magnificence of it and all the inability to even express what happened, you find yourself in this place where you feel like particularly unenlightened in a way, right? It's like, what is going on? But you have to go through that. You have to drop back into the humanness. Adyashanti uses the phraseology. There's the up and out aspect of a realization, and there's the down and in, and you just have to go down and in. I'll read a poetry tonight. I don't know if you'll be around, but I'll read the lyrics to 46 and 2 from Tool. That song, the lyrics to that song describe shadow work so well. It's so physical. It's so direct. It's so, you're picking your scabs. It's like, it's all those parts of yourself that you were able to conveniently overlook when you were mind identified, and now you just can't. You're doing this not just for yourself. You're doing this for everyone. But you won't feel like you're doing it for everyone. It's so personal. It's so intimate. So man, you're doing it. Like, you really are. You're doing what you need to do. You just keep digging in, you keep doing inquiry, you keep trying to wake up, but you have to surrender. You have to see, shit, I have to feel this. I have to screw up. I have to even let myself feel fully resistance, go mind identified again, and then let it just pop again. Like, you kind of have to go through these cycles, and it's okay. Like, you're really doing it, truly. So I don't have any specific advice about techniques or anything for you, because I don't think you need it. I think you're good. It's more just those orientations that, number one, it's totally normal what you're going through. Oh, I also want to say, I can't know for sure, but my suspicion is that the feeling that because it came through an entheogenic trigger, that it may not have been quite as, the insight might have not have been the same or whatever. I actually don't sense that at all. I think that's just self-doubt messing with you. And self-doubt will always mess with all of us, right? Until it just calms down. So I don't sense that. Could be true, could not be, but my guess is no. But my overall takeaways are, be kind to yourself. Don't add any more judgment to the whole thing, but you're going to feel judgments. You're going to feel resistance patterns. Those are all there. They've been there the whole time. You didn't create them. I didn't create them. Awakening didn't create them. But now you have the distinct privilege, and sometimes the pain of actually going through all of it. It's like realization is a genius. It just comes back for everything. And that's what you're experiencing. So that's what I feel for you. And I again, I admire what you're doing. It's not easy work, man. It's just not. So, okay, we got Jessica.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm going to mute everyone but you. Okay, cool. All right.
Okay, so earlier when you were talking about grace, and I don't know if you remember me, but I reached out to you. I have a lot of Christian dialogue for this instead of Buddhist dialogue. So the word grace kind of tripped me up a little bit, because my, dogmatic idea of what grace is, and the way that you said it was almost like grace is the breath between the suffering and the surrender. But could you elaborate on what you meant by grace for me, please?
Sure. I might have trouble remembering what I was saying in the moment.
Yes.
I don't always use the word exactly the same way. Grace to me is really just that this ultimately is undeserved. You can't control how this is going to play out. And the more it plays out, the more things open, the more things clarify, the more you realize you can call it God, you can call it source, universe, energy, you can call it just the unknown. But there's something that is fully beyond you. And it has almost a quality of love, of it's delivering for you, which is the deepest part of your heart, your innermost prompting. And damn well you can't do it for yourself, really. And that's, to me, the feel of grace. But it's undeserved. That's the whole point, is like, maybe you could even call it like we're natural sin, like we're natural sinners in a sense. That all that really means in the way I speak is that there's there are barriers of ignorance that function in our minds and even our hearts. And we can do a lot. We can inquire, we can make a heart level commitment to awakening, to realization, to truth, to God, to whatever resonates for you. We can do all of that, but there's a limit to what we can do. And if we don't admit that, we're sort of still in our own head. We're in our own, we're kind of drinking our own poison. And the admission of that and the feeling of really surrendering is when it's, you kind of almost give it over to the grace of whatever's driving all of this, which is itself ultimately. But that's what I mean when I say grace. It's not the grace of a specific entity necessarily or anything like that. It's more the fact that it's something beyond your abilities. Like something takes over where you just can't go any farther. And I can give you all kinds of examples of that, but it's that type of feeling. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. All right. Now we've got, okay, Q&A. Can we ask the questions? Okay. Greg.
Hello. Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah, really happy to be here with everyone practicing. Yeah, super stoked. I had a question about like during sitting or just while walking around, like I sort of have the sense that, you know, at different times it's like, I feel like I can intentionally orient towards the thing, like being aware of awareness or just noticing the mystery or how it's just all kind of spontaneously, like different aspects of something that seems good, like in the right direction. And then at other times I feel like, you know, when I hear you talking about like, look, there's no way I can describe this, like it's completely beyond knowing. And so I feel like, oh wait, so I'm kind of like doing these things and it seems kind of like there's this layer of artificiality on top of it. Like I'm kind of almost like orienting to a slight thought construct that's like on top of experience or something. But then I feel like if I just kind of like completely give up, then maybe I'm like wasting time when I could be doing something that's like a little bit more intentionally directed. So I just wanted to get your take on that.
Yeah, it's something that you just tune into over time more and more. In a given time, I can sort of tilt someone one way or the other if they're really fixating in one aspect or the other. But in general, like you just develop an attunement to it and a trust for yourself and a trust for not even yourself, a trust for just the flow of experience. What I think is actually how do I want to say it? Inflecting both of those sides for you is the same thing. Actually, it's the sense of the one doing it. It's the sense of the one leaning out or the sense of the one leaning in. The sense can be there because it's a thought in the moment. Oh, I decided now to lean into the sounds as I'm walking, right? Whatever, that's fine that it's there. But as soon as it's the sounds, there should just be the sounds, right? I shouldn't say there should be. There can be just the sounds and that's it, right? Any chatter in the background, you're like, oh, thought, sound. You just keep giving yourself to it. Just keep giving yourself to it. Just keep giving yourself to it. Notice anything else, even the subtle belief that, oh, I'm the one that chose to have this practice. It's fine. That's a thought. Thoughts come, thoughts go. And now sound. Yeah. So Leah, maybe just, I feel like what you're doing is fine, but just maybe lean in a little bit more when you're actually engaging, you know, in life, moving around, washing dishes, the simple things in life. Really just kind of lean your attention or pour your attention into the sounds themselves, the sensations themselves, like until it's almost like you're handing over the remote control to the sensation, the remote control of what you're paying attention to. It's the sensation now. It's actually the one doing everything. Yeah, can you feel into that?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so there's that. And then the other times, if you're like, and then sometimes I feel like I'm leaning back out too much and you know, the mind will get busy saying, oh, you're being lazy, blah, blah, blah. You can decide to lean back in, or in those moments, you can do a little inquiry into, oh, what is that emotion? Oh, it's doubt. It's self-doubt or self-criticism, right? I'm not good enough. So I need to go do things to be good enough, or right. You can do a little shadow work in those cases as well, because really what seems to obscure presence for a long time is one or another flavor of doubt, ultimately, right? The mind just goes, I don't think so. And then it's got you, right? Then it's going to tell you why your experience isn't good enough, or you're not doing the right thing, or you should do more of this or less of that, right? But you're already in the thought process by the time that's happening. And then from there, you could do a little shadow work or a little emotion work or just inquiry, or you could inquire into thoughts even, like if you're sitting and there's just sitting, and a thought says, oh, well, maybe I'm being lazy right now. And you could actually ask yourself, well, what does it mean to be lazy? Like, isn't sitting just sitting? Isn't sitting meditation? Shikantaza. So where's the judgment of being lazy? Where's the judgment of I should be doing something else? It's nowhere but in a thought. Is there a problem with a thought? No, it's just a thought. And you can just be with that thought, it's just consciousness, right? And then often that will just lead you right back into presence, into sensations. When you're sitting also, meditating, I don't know if you meditate with your eyes open or closed, but if you meditate with your eyes closed, it's a good skill to learn to realize what you're looking at behind your eyelids is actually the visual field. It's just like a dark visual field that we learn to ignore. The brain learns to ignore it. But as you start to realize non-dual in the visual field, when you close your eyes to meditate, it's the same. It's actually the same thing if you just sort of remind yourself, and then your attention can go right into that visual field, and those sort of formless forms of color and darkness and so forth they are very much non-dual actually. So that's how you can lean in there as well. So maybe some of those things will be helpful.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I guess there's like this doubt that, like if I'm just experiencing a raw sensation, like this thought comes in that like, oh, I need to like add like a little bit of extra conceptual stuff to it in order to like get the most out of it or something,
Yeah. No, you don't. Definitely don't.
Okay.
Yeah. There's nothing else you don't need to squeeze anything out of it, right? It'll show you everything you need to know. It's both completely subtle and silent, and it's also moving and intimate, and sound, sound, it's like it's indescribable. So as soon as describing starts, it's already the mind, right? As soon as evaluation is doership, or like, what should I do with this? Once you're to this place of just giving yourself, your will, your over to sound, you're not even really doing anything. It's just you're letting it come forward and replace you in a sense. But once you're to this place, there's no need for any kind of concept or picking and choosing practices, etc. Not when it's just the sense experience.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thank
Cool,
you.
man. All right. Okay, and now we got Sam.
Hi, Angelo.
Dude, I'm meeting all these people that I've only seen their names.
I can't think of a way to succinctly ask it, because I don't really know what I'm asking, but since you're so intuitive, then maybe you'll be able to feel it out. I've kind of found myself over the past couple of years getting to a point where more and more like before, if something went wrong, like I would lose a friendship or a relationship, or like I would want to even like change my career path or something, I'd be like, oh, this doesn't work out, and then I'd replace it with something better, and then the hope of something better would kind of like make me feel optimistic or whatever, and that would kind of drive me forward until that kind of falls apart, and then and then you find something else, and you're like, okay, well, maybe this, and I think one of the things that led me to spirituality is that always, even when I did acquire the certain thing, or I was pursuing it, there was always doubt, no matter what it was. And so, I was never, I never like held anything too long in my arms or anything. But basically, what I've noticed has been happening is that more and more, I've been losing more and more things like I did before, but I don't feel like going out and getting better ones or new ones. Like, for example, over the past 2 years, I've lost like 5 of my good friends for different reasons. And, that's something that had never happened to me before in my life. I couldn't even imagine it. But, they're all kind of gone. And so before, I would just like get a ticket, fly to another country, meet people, make friends, feel good again, right? But for some reason, that feels wrong to do. It feels like I don't want to replace anything when I lose something. And it just feels like I want to keep letting go. But at the same time, I'm not sure it's the same no man's land that you talked about with Felipe, but because I haven't had any realization, but it feels like I it feels like I don't want to completely like surrender to this process, but I also like don't want to like go back to how things were. Like there's no way I could. And even if I start to, like, I'm just so miserable. Like if I start playing like video games or something, like to get my mind off it, like in the back of my head, it's just like suffering, suffering, suffering. But if I sit down, I'm also like uncomfortable, uncomfortable, uncomfortable. So it's just always like, it just feels like completely, I could say it feels like I'm wasting my time, but I know that that's just a thought too. So it's just like feels uncomfortable, I guess I could say.
Oh yeah. Great. Well, go ahead.
And no, I mean, I have a therapist and I talk to her and she's receptive, but it's just weird because I can't like talk to anyone about it. So I'm really grateful that, this group and you right now that I could finally say this to someone, because anyone else would be like, oh, you need to go get a job. You need to go do this. And I'm not saying I don't, but
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. It's as you're talking, I'm reminded I'm inclined to recall a previous question about grace, and like this to me is sort of the feel of grace, the part of like losing friends and so forth. Of course I wouldn't wish that on anybody, and I can't tell you for sure why that's happening, et cetera, and all that, but the sense of even the way you described it is like you sense there's something to it. And man, I'll tell you, like the reality is so smart. It has this way. Everyone's different. Everyone's path is different. But there are sort of motifs to it. But reality has this way of just arranging things for you a certain way. I've seen people who have had so much loss in their life, it just breaks your heart, and you're like, oh my God, how is this even? And then they wake up and they just keep waking up, and it's just amazing, and sometimes life just knows there's certain parts of us that we're not going to dissect out ourselves. We don't, for whatever reason, we don't have the interest or capability to like dissect that part of ourself out that's a distraction or whatever. And I can think of a lot of examples. Adyashanti talked about it because he was all about awakening, but there was one thing he held on to, and that was his athleticism. And he was a competitive cyclist, and life literally just stopped that from happening for him. It made it so he couldn't do it anymore, more than once. And he described that, he's talked about that many times. And that's what I mean by this grace. There sometimes are parts of our lives we just can't address directly. We don't, for whatever reason. And life just says, here, let me just take that out of your way for you. Let me just clear the stage a little bit for you, just to make things a little more obvious or less distracting and so forth. And that's kind of how it feels of what you've described. And then the other part where you're like, I feel like I'm flirting with it, but I'm not gung-ho right now in this moment about it or whatever. That's totally fine. You're getting to that place where it feels like that red hot iron ball you can neither spit out nor swallow. Now you can't spit it out. You're because you said it. Like I go to play video games, I'm like, shit, that's not deeply satisfying. So as I was talking to somebody about this today, who has had a lot of tragedy in his life and woke up very, very profoundly. And I was saying to him, I was like, it really is grace. Like you wouldn't wish this kind of tragedy on anyone, but people who've had a lot of tragedy, they really do wake up quickly. Whereas people who haven't don't always wake up as quickly, because they have to kind of clear some things out and really start seeing clearly that all the usual ways we tell ourselves we're happy and the ways we tell ourselves we're stable and life is good enough, it's okay. You gotta really see through that stuff and see that underneath it, though, I really am suffering. There really is something that wants to be addressed, and I want to address it. And that can just take a little bit of time. Like it can. But a sign that it's working is when the things that used to be satisfying, distractions and so forth, you try to do it and it feels like not right. You're like, this isn't going to do it. I know this isn't going to do it. Right. It's sort of like cutting off mind roads, cutting off your escape exit. You've done it to yourself and life's doing it for you. Right. And so it moves you in the direction you need to be moved in. That's what I feel in what you've said. How to get leverage on yourself and so forth. I can't tell you exactly. All I can tell you is inquiry has this way about it where the more you start to inquire, the more you dig in. It goes from almost like it can feel boring at first, or like I'm not going anywhere, I don't really care. the more you do it, the more you're like, no, wait a minute, something's there. There's a trick I'm playing on myself in my own mind, and I need to get behind it, but I can't get behind it because I'm the one doing it. Right. But there's got to be something else, and you keep digging back, trying to take that backward step. And it really can sort of catch fire. So if there's any advice I have, it's really just look for, feel into your natural question or koan in life. If you move that way. If you don't, it's okay too. Many people wake up through literally just surrender and just, it's time to let go. And that can be a very profound awakening as well. So that's my sense of what you described. Do you need to get, like, if I were my Zen teacher talking, he would tell you ways to get leverage on yourself. Remind yourself life could be short. There's potential for accidents. There's potential for, death that can come early, and like really look at it and go, this is your opportunity, strike while the iron's hot and that sort of thing. And that can work sometimes, but if you just don't feel that kind of fire right at this moment, sometimes just inquiry, or just keep, even prayer, really, like prayer to the universe of like, do what you need to do. If you need to take more things away from me, if that's what I need to get this leverage on myself, to dig in more, to see what I need to see, then so be it. I'm ready for that. I'm willing to see what I need to see, feel what I need to feel, let go where I need to let go, even if I can't do it myself. So that kind of movement can be helpful as well.
Yeah, what you said, just to tack it on, I noticed an event happened, and it was, there was no way for my mind to blame them or do anything. And it was just like pure suffering, feeling of pure suffering. And I sat down, and that's when I started messaging you a lot. And I was like, what's this? What's happening here? What's this like non-dual, like intimacy, this feeling of neutral? And that kind of like went on for a couple days. And then I kept inquiring, but slowly, like, I don't know, maybe like my mind was like putting pieces back together, and it just started to be, the suffering wasn't as great. And then and then it was just uncomfortable. So then my mind's like, let's try to do this. Let's try to do this. Let's try. And then so I don't know it, but when I guess if I don't do it, as you said, life will punch me in the face again. So my soul is laid bare, and it'll happen on its own.
Yeah,
Right.
it tends to be tapping you on the shoulder. You feel energetically more like someone who moves, at least as far as realization, moves in the feminine aspect a little bit more, which is great. That's the surrender aspect. Just be honest with yourself about things. That's the most important thing. Be honest about with what's going on, with distractions, with noticing reactions, emotions. Like that's the fuel for that aspect, is like just honesty and authenticity. And then reality does the rest. It will move you where you need to be moved. It will open what needs to be open, and it'll let you drop through.
Awesome. Look forward to it.
Yeah, man.
Thanks.
Good to hear from you.
Hear from you.
Okay, we got Dave. Maybe. Okay, Dave. Yeah. I see him unmuted, but I don't hear anything.
I just sent you my question.
Okay. Let me look. Coming down. Okay, here's a question. Okay. There are many things that one may want to achieve in life. For example, earning enough to buy a beautiful home in the tropics, getting a PhD in math, or becoming a great tuba player. All of these start with initial craving thoughts, and then sustained thought and planning and effort over time. But if we are training to regard thoughts as just worthless, ego-driven ripples in consciousness, it seems we are setting ourselves up to just becoming couch potatoes for life. Is awakening worth such a radical renunciation of the ambitions, potentials, and talents? It's a good question, actually. I do address this in my book, that I don't equate awakening to like non-functionality, to giving up your responsibilities in life. And one of your responsibilities in life is, if you feel a genuine pull towards something, like for me, it was medicine. I think I feel there's a responsibility to develop yourself in that way, or answer that call. A lot of what mind identification is and does isn't necessarily about what you do, meaning the thoughts aren't always just there to spur you on to doing. They're often there to hold you back and to cause a sort of hesitation tone. Not that they're trying to do that, but that's the effect. So the sum total effect of a lot of thinking oftentimes isn't actually doing. It's the opposite. It's a hesitation. It's fear, the analysis, the paralysis of analysis, and that sort of thing. So so in my experience, and I've gone through this myself, and I've worked with many people who've gone through it, I've never at all actually personally worked with someone who's monastic or a renunciate. Well, I have here and there to various degrees, but the vast majority of people I've worked with who have been waking up have jobs, relationships, going to school. I've worked with competitive athletes, like people who are pretty active and do quite a bit. So in a practical sense, I would say it's certainly not true that you have to sort of give up a lot of parts of your other parts of your life to wake up and so forth. But again, I would refer to the book. I do talk about this in one of the chapters. But the other thing I want to say about this is that it is, even though you don't have to give, it's not like you have to make a choice to, I'm going to give up my relationships, I'm going to give up jobs, etc. And as with the last person I talked to, it does happen sometimes. Like life will rearrange things for you sometimes once you're really earnestly on this path. However, it's very unpredictable. It doesn't mean that's going to happen all the time. But I don't recommend anyone purposely deciding, okay, I'm not going to go to work, I'm not going to do anything else because I'm wanting to wake up. I want to address the spiritual part of my life. I don't recommend that. I don't think it's necessarily helpful unless you feel truly inclined to go live a monastic life, to live in a monastery. If you feel moved to do it, do it. It's great. But it's definitely not necessary. So then if you don't have to eliminate all these other areas of your life to make awakening a priority, how do you make awakening a priority? And for me, the way I usually say it is, it's not a matter of practicality as much. It's a matter of priority, and it's a matter of heart-based commitment, really. Because the textures of life, the challenges with the people, jobs, relationships, all of it, those will help you wake up, especially after the initial awakening. They will help deepen things. It helps show you things you couldn't see otherwise. And so, yeah, I don't recommend sort of avoiding anything in life to do this. Thoughts specifically, as I talk about in my thoughts chapter, thoughts are not in and of themselves a problem. It's really our relationship with thought. And it's something like a desire and aversion arrangement, right? We desire certain thoughts, we have aversions to other thoughts. And what we learn, especially if there's a lot of emotional repression, what we learn early in life is, oh, I can actually use this world of thoughts, even though there's a lot of desire and aversion, push, pull, sort of struggle up in the thought world, but I can actually use that to avoid the even more painful physical reality of being me and my body, mind, and my story, my life, which some people have very, very difficult lives, a lot of abuse and so forth. So we learn to just live inside that internal world. But again, when we're that disconnected from our bodies, from life and so forth, often there's a lot of hesitation, a lot of distorted views, and that can actually prevent us from naturally expressing in creative ways and in vocational ways and relationships and so forth. So hopefully that's helpful. But again, my chapter on thoughts and the chapter in which I address like, you know, whether or not you should eliminate parts of your life to work on awakening and so forth are hopefully are helpful as well. Okay, back up the list here. All right. Okay, Diego.
Hey, Angelo, how are you?
Hey.
So my question is, how can you calm down the seeker? Like, even, based on what I heard before, it's like I'm not coming from suffering, but I've started this journey, like, I would say maybe 2 months ago, maybe a little more. And I'm like crazy, right? To the point where, like, is this something that I'm creating myself, or is this really happening? Does it mean anything? It's like you get into that rabbit hole where, you don't know if what's happening is really happening, or you are just so eager for something to happen that you're just creating it, and you trust that, or you think that is real, but it's not that real.
Sure.
So it feels like every minute, everything that I do, I'm just waiting to, get that click that you referred to, where, it's raining and I try to see the drops and see if something happens that, will shake me out or something. So how can I calm down and, take it easy?
Oh, well, first of all, I don't know if you have to calm down. I don't necessarily subscribe to the belief that spiritual seeking is bad in and of itself, but I'll address it this way. Again, there's a way of speaking and teaching Neo-Advaita that would say that spiritual seeker, that me sense, that seeking sense, is never going to find what it wants. And that's true. It is true, because it's a thought ultimately, right? It's born of a sense of separation that doesn't even exist. So, however, it doesn't mean that encouraging that seeking energy in a certain way, directing it in a certain way, doesn't work, because it does work. There's different ways to do it. Like in Zen, again, it would be take all of that drive to awaken, to know, and just hone it down into mu. What is mu? What is mu is a question you can't even begin to answer, but you can direct your attention into it. Strangely, you can. It works. And so it's okay that it's there. First of all, it's okay that it's there. It's not comfortable. I know that. Again, the red hot iron ball, you can't spit it out and you can't swallow it. It's not comfortable to have a red hot iron ball somewhere here, but it's lawful. It does work. It means something. It's the second thing I want to say about it is it's not new. This raging seeking energy, it's not new. It's been there. The beautiful thing about realization, it doesn't create something that's not there. It uncovers things that are there. It's just that for most of us, when the mind is doing what the mind does and we're really identified with it, the seeking kind of goes in all these different directions. You're pulled over here, you're pulled over there, and the sum total is just kind of like blah. You don't always realize how much seeking's going on. But when you start to meditate, when you start to inquire, when you really start to dig in, you become very familiar with the seeking energy, and it gets directed in a sort of spiritual direction. So what you've come from to here is a sort of success, in a sense, in that you've honed it down into a sort of one pointed seeking. And that's, in my opinion, that's good. It's not a bad thing. It's what you do with it that matters, and so know that, first of all, it's okay. It's normal. It's fine. And the seeking energy itself isn't new. You've just harnessed it, and harnessed it, in my opinion, in the best direction you can harness it in. So now it's a matter of directing it at its own route, which is very strange to do, but it can be something like as simple as, when you notice those seeking thoughts, I can't wait till this happens, or, oh, that's almost going to happen. And you recognize, oh, that's a thought. And there's a feeling associated with that thought, like a feeling of what? Oh, I don't know. It might be desire. It might be frustration. There's a feeling. There's also something here that's sort of aware of all of it, but actually doesn't care how it goes. It's subtle. It doesn't make as much noise as the mind does. It doesn't make as much noise as the seeking thoughts, but it's here. It's a sort of a quiet voice. Do you know that?
Yeah, I think I feel it.
Very good. Now you can ask, well, what is that?
Empty.
Yeah, but don't conclude about it though, even to yourself though.
Okay.
I don't disagree with you, but don't even make, because the moment you make a conclusion, you've turned it into an object. I mean, what is it? And then just keep going back to it. Just keep going back to it. Just keep going back to it. It's the same question as asking, what is mu? It's the same question actually as asking, who am I? Or to whom does this thought refer? You're just going back to that place. And it has an alchemical effect. I don't know what it is, and I can't tell you how long you have to keep returning to it. but at some point, everything's going to look very different, right? That mind can get raging. It can get going crazy. Oh my God, I almost got it. Damn, I haven't got it. Why is it so frustrating? That guy got it. She got it. He got it. I've been at this for 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, 10 years, 20 years. Like, it doesn't matter what story the mind tells. It's always the same story. It's a different version. But no matter how raging that mind is, you can just realize right away, that's one single thought. Oh, this is one single feeling. It's a tightness here. Oh, okay. Is there anything here that actually is not contingent upon having or not having, awake or not awake? It actually doesn't care. It doesn't make that distinction at all. And then just touch into that. And then it's like, well, what the hell is that? What is that? Why is that? Why does that not care? What could it possibly be? And you just keep getting closer, closer, closer. Yeah. And then any thought that comes is fine. I'm happy to have a thought come because I can disregard it and return to this, whatever this is. That's a pretty potent approach, in my opinion. You know, you can harness that into, well, who am I that's aware of that thought? Look there. It's a silent space. As you said, it's empty in a sense. But when you go there, just stay there. And if a thought comes, it's fine. Use that thought to catapult you right back.
Yeah. And that's what I do. Yeah, totally.
Awesome.
That
That's
self-inquiry continuously.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Awesome,
All right.
man.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Cool. All right. And then we got a link. Okay. So there's a link for a Google Docs, and we're going to put announcements on that. Anyone can put announcements on it. But the one announcement that we'll make again later, just in case anyone missed, is that we don't have sound meditation through this entire retreat because the person who does it, Violet, has a family illness that she's helping with. So we won't have the music sound meditation, just so you know. Okay, document.
Yeah, and I put that on there.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Black cat. Before and yeah. Sleeping, lost my younger. Oh my gosh, that's hard. Oh my gosh, I'm really sorry to hear that. Holy cow. Okay. Dave's question. All right, I think we got, did I miss anybody? Throw your name up there if I missed anybody.
Sorry, I just got you one last question in case there was time.
Let's do it. Wait, we got time.
Okay, I wrote it, but I can say it again here. I've been recently very focused on the Hanya Shingyo, the Heart Sutra. I've been going to a Buddhist temple, and they do talk about this, so I've been trying to memorize it. And there are a couple things that are there. One of them is the idea of ku, or the it's the word in Japanese for sky, but also for emptiness, right? Or for non-form. So in Japanese, it goes like shikizukuze kuku sukuze shiki, which is like form is empty. So that's why it seems like form. And emptiness because has no form, looks like form. So there is this ku, which would be empty, but then they go to something that is mu, and which seems to be different. Ku, I believe, would be sunya or shunya, and mu, I believe, would be nothingness, which would be different than emptiness. Do you have any insights on why those two appear and what would be the difference, and in any ways how this would be helpful to understand the difference? Thank you.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about what you're describing, but I really can't speak to the specific terminology and words. I just don't know. I don't know the translations and so forth. One thing that's interesting is my Zen teacher, when we go into Dokusan, which is a private interview, you know, it's talking one-on-one. It's not necessarily a conversation, you know, all this, but I'm just for everybody. It's not necessarily a normal type of conversation. It's a very instinctual interaction. Often you're working on a koan. He or she may exchange 3 words with you and then send you out, or you may have a 15-minute discussion about something. You never know what's going to happen or how it's going to go. It's really, really cool. But in the Dokusan room, he had a piece of Japanese calligraphy behind him on a scroll. And one time I never really knew what it was, actually. It was a simple symbol, a couple symbols. And one time he turned around, he pointed to it, he said, this up here, he said, this says empty sky. And he said, you know, it's a poetic pointing, but it's as you described. Shunyata. He said this. He said everything that happens in here, that's what it's about. This. He said, in fact, everything that happens, it's about this empty sky. And I just love that so much. I love the not only the translation, what it means in the Heart Sutra, but just the poetic phraseology of empty sky. Empty sky is right in front of your face. It's the sensation right now. It's just the sensation of being alive right now. It sings so loud. It sings so loud all the time, as emptiness, as nothingness, as absolute quietude, as primordial silence. And it also sings so loud as the sensation of flesh, of the hands, the movement, the feeling, the warmth, the coolness. It's incredible that there's actually no boundary between form and emptiness. It's ecstatic always. It calls me always. This, if I could somehow help or reflect enough that someone can experience this in life, this is it. And this is what it's all about. And the Heart Sutra is all the way up and down the line pointing to this. It's so beautiful. Yeah, to experience the emptiness of form is one thing, but to experience form as actual emptiness coming forth from nothing, as nothing, fully just this, like just this, it's so ecstatic. And it's so simple. It's non-conceptual. It's just aliveness reveling in itself as form, and that form is formless. So that's about everything I can say about it. I don't know the translations, all that stuff, although I do find that very interesting. Yeah, I did learn to do it in Sino-Japanese in the Zen Center, but I forgot it. I chanted it many times. I know the first couple lines or whatever, but yeah, the Heart Sutra, man. You could use that one piece of liturgy for the rest of your life, really, and just keep unpacking it and just keep finding that truth in life, moment to moment, again and again and again. It's so deep and profound and powerful. Yeah.
Thank you very much, man. I just want to say that there is this characteristic that I believe everybody must say about you, that is like, you're the
I lost your voice. Sorry. It was there and then it wasn't.
okay. Now is
the
it?
Cat turned you off.
Oh yeah, for sure it is. Sorry about that. I was saying that you're basically the impersonation of "I'll have what he's having," kind of feeling when you discuss this idea of coup. Is like, I just need to keep downloading and watching your videos daily, because I think this, in simplicity, is just more like living more with people that remind you what you're losing by following that voice of procrastination of, oh, let's just watch TV and jerk off or whatever. Just like focusing on this is just amazing. So thank you very much again for
Yeah, you're welcome. I appreciate the work you're doing. I mean, it's so funny because it's right in front of my face. It's like emptiness right there. So you don't need to achieve it, but yet in the relative, as Dogen says, you know, you got to do some work or whatever. But it's everyone here is this that we're talking about in physical form. Okay. Oh, all right. Okay. Okay. Do we have, Michelle? Okay, I think unless I missed somebody, Michelle wanted to ask another question. We have time for sure.
So you talk a lot about working with thoughts, but what's been mainly going on for me a lot and all day long certainly is sadness. So how do you work with emotions, or do you work with emotions other than experiencing them?
Yeah, that's the primary mode, is just to feel it. Like, where do you feel it right now? Yeah.
Just, yeah.
Yeah. And can
I
you
mean,
put your
you
attention
know,
just
kind of here, but it's also like this whole veil over me.
Mhm. Can you put your attention just fully into it, in the sensation itself? Yeah. And can you, as you're doing that, just keep listening. Um, as you're doing that and just really keeping your attention in the sensations, do you also notice that the mind will also construct like an image of the body, like a visual image? Now, see if you can just let that go a little bit more and just keep the attention in those sensations. Do they seem to move or are they still?
Moves into like kind of nausea.
Mm, yeah. And you can go right there too. And even if it feels nauseous, you can go right there. And then just take away the phrase or the term nausea, but keep feeling it. Can you find as you're listening, just keep your attention there, if you would. And do you find any sense anywhere of something, a belief or something that wants to resist this experience at all? Good, good. Do you feel anything that says, no, it shouldn't be like this? Great. Yeah. I think also as you're feeling this, just let your body really relax, like your jaw, your mouth, your face, like let it just inhabit the body. Let it inhabit and give it permission to move how it needs to move, to feel how it needs to feel, all the while keeping your attention in it. And just open the door to it. Just let it be there fully. Let it express, let it inhabit the body fully, inhabit your body. We're not trying to fix anything. We're not trying to solve anything. We're just going right down into it, right down into it. Just let it be there. Let it come. Let it come. Give it permission to just be right here, right here, right here. Excellent. You have every right to feel this. It has every right to be felt. Just let the body process this. Your body knows what to do. This environment is your body, and your body is the environment, and it knows how to process this, knows how to feel it. So just let it be there. We're all right here with you. We're right here with you. You're in a safe environment, in a safe space. Just let it be there. Just go down and touch it. Feel it. You're doing great. This is it. This is what it's about. Just let it be just what it is. We're all here to support this experience. We're all here to support this honest connection. It's wonderful. Yeah, just sit with it. Let me know if you ever want more pointing on that.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, of course. We all go through that. It's human. It's human. Grief, loss. It's part of life. It's part of life. We can't fully embrace life unless we really can let go as well. We have to be able to let go. It's human. It's natural. We're all going to have to let go in various ways and to various degrees at different times. But at some point, we have to really let go. So it's okay. It's natural. Yeah. Yeah, you can use the same process for judgment, someone asked. You can use this process really for anything. Judgment's a little more in the head. But if you're feeling judgment, you can ask questions like, is there something underneath that judgment? What is underneath judgment? What is there if I let the judgment, the mental process of judgment rest? What's lurking beneath? Maybe what do I not want to feel? What am I using that judgment to avoid, to suppress, if I am? You might feel something else, something you don't want to feel. Judgment is kind of easy, right? In a sense, it's convenient. We all judge, right? Turn on your TV, turn on the internet, you see judgment everywhere. But what is it we don't want to feel? We're good at judgment, right? What are we not good at? You know, only you can answer that, but it might be something like anger. Might be grief too. You know, you got to feel into it. So yeah, you can work like this with anything, with any emotion for sure. Okay, that was a good session. A lot of good questions.
We're missing Tony. Sorry.
Tony, don't run away. Oh, here he is. Okay. Let's do it.
Thanks, Felipe. I was just going to wait till tomorrow.
Sorry, somehow.
Mine's related kind of to Diego's question. I wanted to ask you what your perspective was on when you're getting glimpses or mini realizations often for a long period of time, but it never kind of goes all the way. Like I read about, progressive insight stuff and some of John Tan's stages, and some things that seem to be happening also kind of out of order. Like I know that he says that, any one of those can occur, but it also seemed like there would be an order, and it's glimpses, but it's also like very strange things that happen and been happening for a long time, but doesn't have a real sticking realization. Like yesterday, I was working with your video where you were talking about just try to like this is what's happening is the only thing. So I was doing that yesterday all day, and I was riding in the car and I was listening to something and I was singing by myself because I can't sing, but in the car I was singing and, feeling sensations and the sounds and doing all the, John Tan's stanzas too. I think about those, and it's like I was singing, and then all of a sudden I had a thought that said, "Who is that singing?" Not because it was like I was practicing, but I literally it was disembodied. Like my voice was not mine, and then I had a thought that said, "Who's that singing?" But it came out of nowhere, and it didn't feel like my thought even. It felt like it came and went, and it was like, like a non-dual, non-attached, like the character singing. And for a minute, I literally didn't know that it was my voice. It was like for like a bit, and it really threw me off, like really like was very strange and like just put me all over the place. And stuff like that's been happening in different ways. I told you about some of them last time. And it happens like in different ways. And then I had a like a real non-dual like glimpse that was several seconds, and it was like gone. And it's like, but it kind of drives me a little insane because it's like I've done a ton of emotion work, but it's like, is there like something blocking it that's not being processed? Because just to be honest, it's cool when it happens, but it's also maddening because it's like getting jabbed in the face a bunch, but never getting knocked out. And it's just like a beating. It's like taking a beating or something.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering if like you had any, insight to what that is.
Oh gosh, it's such a double-edged sword to talk about this in terms of awakening being an event.
Yeah.
Because certain mindsets, it just sets that up. And it's like, no matter, it's really not an event. It's just not. It's not but the only way to talk about it is in terms of temporality and saying this event happens and whatever, here's the characteristics of it. But understand that I can't perceive realization as an event that happened to Angelo. It's not like that. I just use that terminology because sometimes it feels relevant to help to point to whatever. But that's not, it's actually right here, and it's always here, and it's always been here. It could only always be here. That is exquisitely clear. And it's kind of what I always point to. So the sort of like a taste of it and then wanting to grasp it and it's not there again. And that feeling, that seeking, I guess, of the mind, that mechanism, and the frustration associated with it, that distraction itself, if you could see for whom that seems to be happening, that's where the key is. And that probably is very frustrating to hear, but it's true. It's like, what part of you believes that that's happening, that's true of you? Like, who is that true of, I guess is what I'm pointing to. Who is that true of? Because even, okay, let's say an awakening does happen in time, but an awakening is sort of by definition, it's a realization of timelessness. So that does not happen in time. But when the sense of there being time comes back online, that's already the thinker. That's not anyone.
That's my very first thing that ever happened to me, literally was like that, out of time completely.
Yes.
And it was like, I remember that.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember even knowing, like, coming back into time,
mm-hmm.
that it was false. But it's like, once the narrative starts, or it reestablishes itself, it's like,
how long did that sort of the overall thing last though? Like, did you have a honeymoon period after that?
Was
like weeks or so, or months?
This is what I've, never been able to really figure out. Is like, the very first thing that ever happened to me, I was only 13.
Okay.
And I was going up an elevator. I was in the mall with my mom, and we were going up an up escalator, and a down escalator was right beside of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to walk up the up escalator, and it was wrong. Like, I was supposed to go down. And for whatever reason, it stopped my mind. Like, this isn't correct.
Mm.
And, because I was going the wrong way, and I went to step, and everything just blew to pieces. Like, and it went out of time, and everything turned, like, reality literally broke. And almost like, I remember it, I was 13, I'm 44 now, but it like broke into glass pieces, what it looked like, and exploded into like bright white, and then went dark like a computer. And it seems like, when I think about it now, like a secession happened.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure.
And then I was out of time, and then I felt like it was forever. But when I came back, it was literally like a second or two, because my mom was like, "What are you doing?" I like stepped back. But that was like the very first thing. And then after that, it was like, I didn't know any of this stuff. I was like, I grew up as a Christian and in a Southern Baptist type place. And so I didn't have like, it just left me like completely like in wonderment. And it also really messed me up for a while, because it kind of took away personal will. And I didn't care about the things that, like, a 13-year-old boy who was like going into puberty and trying to start learning how to, like, what he was going to do with his life. Like, I didn't care about any of that.
Yeah.
Because what I saw or felt, or whatever you want to call it, was so like beyond normal stuff.
Here's the thing. So everyone here's probably heard me say awakenings happen all different ways. This process is very different for everyone, and believing it's going to be a certain way for you will just screw up your mind. So this is a perfect example. You had an awakening at 13 years old. It changed everything for you. Yeah. You can't have that again. You can't you're not going to have another awakening. It's not like that now. Right now for you, it's all about presence. But what obscures that, if it does, you can investigate directly. So for instance, when you talk about like, it's like you're not in time. You know that when you play the character of being this guy in time, right? Tony in time, when you play that character, you're playing a character. You know that, right? It's not really true. Yeah.
Yeah. In a way it
now
does.
So you'll never convince yourself that that character is going to wake up to what you already know. This is really important for you to see. This is at the energetic level, but that's what's tripping you up, truly. So what gets revealed is actually something very, very simple and very human in these experiences. That is frustration and impatience. Frustration and impatience, if you just unpack them or feel into them or whatever, or inquire, you'll realize what they are is they're you trying to convince yourself to believe in something you don't actually believe in. Time. Impatience is about time, but you know damn well that that's not really true. Yeah. When you have that kind of an insight at that age and it affects you that much, you don't come back from that. But you've learned to live the life of people because it's a survival instinct. You learn to get along, to communicate that way, and you've kind of almost convinced yourself again that it's true, but you know it's not. That's what I think you're struggling with, actually. I've said this before, that I meet many people who aren't really as awake as they think they are, or some people. I occasionally meet someone who's more awake than they realize, and that's you. Like, I really think that. It's not a good thing or a bad thing. It just is. But it's important to understand that it's like you can't come from a place where there's no orientation and then learn a sort of false orientation, which is just the relative world, and then use that to get back to somewhere that you never left. You're going to be tripping over yourself constantly, and it's going to be frustrating. That's what you're feeling. So there's no big
is the self inquiry that, like, that's a thought getting to whatever,
Yep.
not effective, or
I don't think you need it.
else?
I don't think you don't need the self-inquiry. I wouldn't recommend necessarily self-inquiry for you. I would recommend really looking at the beliefs and impressions around this stuff.
Mhm.
Looking at what, feeling into these things, and emotions, simple emotions like that are very common: frustration, impatience. These are very common emotions. But for you, because you're so clear, and you are, those simple and socially acceptable and normal, quote unquote, normal emotions that most people function out of a lot, actually, those are going to feel like a huge hindrance to you. I think that's what you're actually feeling more than anything to do with realization, because realization for you, in a sense, is already there. It's like the sun is there even if the clouds are covering it, right? That instinct.
Yeah, and that makes it more painful.
It does, absolutely.
It's extremely painful to
Yeah.
not, but see, it was like a glimpse. So, to me, when I hear about realization for somebody, it seems like it's very clear.
Yes.
And then there's no going back. But to me, it was just like, just a side swipe, and like, what was that?
Totally. I want to say two things about what you just said. You're right. Strangely enough, if you've developed a sort of full-on human adult ego, then realization is a really freaking big deal. Like, if Kensho is a huge deal, it's a huge, huge, huge contrast. It's a huge relief. When you're 13 years old, you haven't even fully formed an ego yet, and it happens. You don't even know what context to put that in. You're not going to have that event like other people have, where you feel like a self and now you're not. You're not going to have that because you already had it, basically. So that's one thing, is that the age range in which this happened. The other thing that's interesting I notice is, strangely enough, people who have more on the shallow side of awakening are usually the ones that describe it as a more dramatic experience. People who have really, really deep awakenings, it kind of goes to this place. It's first that explosion of light, but it goes to this place where you just can't say a damn thing about it. It's like, something happened, but it's indescribable. You don't even feel inclined to describe it. So I
just don't understand why it feels like, like you said, 13-year-old, it's like, I felt like an alien since then, but at the same time, I feel very mind identified and very, I still think I'm Tony, you know what I mean? It's not like it's not clear that I'm not, you know what I mean? I don't know what to do with that, because it feels like when I do the self-inquiry and I'm trying to, like what you talk about, what we were talking about, and if you still feel like Tony and you still feel identified, then it's like, I don't know where to go with that. I
When-
don't know.
When you hear about like the sense of I am, does that just make zero sense to you, or
No, it does. It definitely
it makes
does.
sense? You feel that sense of I am?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. It, I don't know. I mean, I
Right,
do.
exactly.
I think I do. I think I really, but it's like I've always been like real careful because I've been around this for quite a while, but seriously in this aspect of it for maybe 5 years, and I've seen a lot of people, especially people from like California, who are like awakening light, and then they say they're awake, and then they go around saying stuff and they're obviously not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I like want to be very careful that I never say something like that without knowing it for sure, without thinking about it, but knowing it.
Yeah.
So it's like
You'll never be able to say I'm awake or I'm enlightened. I would never even think to say something like that, because where would I even pull that information from? What would I reference for that?
Yeah.
When I ask you, like, do you feel a sense of I am? And you go, sure. And then when you really feel into it, I can tell you don't seem to actually find it. I could be wrong, but that's my sense of you. I think you've learned to talk about it, but can you really find a sense of I in there?
I don't know. I might have to think about it or to like sit with it or something. I don't know. I don't know.
You don't know?
Because I don't know. It created so much depression over the years. And then I did so much emotion work with thoughts and beliefs to try to raise myself up out of that and just live more normally.
Yeah.
And I was able to do that for a few, several years ago, but I don't know. I don't know. I really don't.
I mean, to me, you feel like you're in a good place, but I do feel like a bit of an emotion barrier. And you've probably done a lot of emotion work, but the thing I feel from you both times I've talked to you is like frustration.
Oh yeah, sure. There's tons.
Which is okay. It's fine. That's just what I feel. And you might be able to unpack that. It's a lot. So as realization deepens, often the barriers aren't about what's the right stanza to use or what's the MMK really mean. That's not what it's about. It's very human stuff. It's like a certain emotional block or something you're not seeing. It's a blind spot often. Or
that's what I was asking you at the beginning. Is like, do you think there's some sort of thing? Because it feels like it's pushing in on me with all those things that happen. But it's like, was there a block there emotionally or something that I'm not seeing?
Yeah.
That stopping.
As I talk to you, I can feel into the frustration. Like I want to just go in there and feel it. That is enlightenment to me. That's realization. I'm not looking for an event, and you should probably not. I don't think you need to look for an event anymore. You can do what you want, but I wouldn't recommend for you seeking an event like as a big awakening kind of thing. I think you already had that actually. And I think it's just going to deepen and clarify for you. And it is, and it will. But a lot of times these emotional barriers can be sticky, but it has, as Adyashanti describes, there's the up and out. You had a massive freaking crazy up and out when you were 13 years old. The down and in part is, to the degree that up and out is mind blowing and earth shattering. The down and in part tends to be even harder. It's just like, because some part of you just wants to disappear completely. It knows it's not anything in form, and yet here you are in form. So that's the discord. So the down and in part is so important, but that ends up being the release valve. It's like, let me say it this way. Often we come to spirituality because we suffer, and the simple and logical conclusion is I'm going to stop suffering by escaping somehow from the suffering, getting out of the suffering, escaping from the suffering. And at first you do escape up and out often, or with an awakening and things like that. You can have this expansive experience and so forth. But that becomes very problematic when you try to keep having that, when you try to keep expanding into nothingness or transcending or being zero. It doesn't end up being that way. You have to come back into the form and then once you find emptiness in form and you experience form as emptiness, then you really, really know what realization is about. It's not about you. It's not about a self. It's not about anything like that. It's experiential, but it's here, always here. So when I talk to you, I feel the frustration in a sense, but I don't feel there's no hopelessness here because I know that you're carrying around what you need to continue to awaken, and it's your body mind, literally it's your physicality. That's that you just keep finding that emptiness in the form, the emptiness in the form. It's so hard to talk about this, but it's an aliveness that is your body. It's your everything. It's all of it, and it's everything in the room around you as well. It is the physical experience of just aliveness. That's it. That's the future for you. The future is not in an awakening. It's not in an event. That's just the mind tripping itself up, really. I think you take anything I say with a grain of salt, but I'm being honest. Like that's what it feels like. The mind is going to trip itself up, keep trying to get to something. There's nothing to get to. You're already in it. You're in this physical matter. And now you have to just feel down into it with however you have to go. Vulnerability, inquire into the emotions until it's very, very clear that this body is nothing but emptiness. But you're not negating the body anymore. You're not negating the body, mind, the self, the conventional. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Can you feel into that? Is that helpful at all?
Think so. Yeah,
Okay.
I'll try to do that.
Yeah.
See where it goes.
Yeah.
You think like a body scanning like that to try to?
I mean, to be honest, if I give you one thing, I would say look into frustration, unpack it a little bit, somehow inquiry, do some figure it, see if you can dig deeper into like what's causing the frustration or impatience. Like, again, the story on top of it is about awakening or whatever, but I mean, I bump into people who are not in spiritual circles at all, and I feel nothing but impatience from them. And it's not, they're not going to make it about the spiritual thing. It's just, it's something we inherit from someone, or some way our body responds to conditioning or whatever it is. But I think that will help to probably unpack that a little bit and just feel into it. Maybe there's something that happened in your childhood that causes it. It causes a sense of just feeling frustrated. Why do I feel frustrated? What does it get me to feel frustrated? Is there a benefit? How can the mind use that to pull me out of what's actually happening? You may not find any answers around this stuff, but sometimes just asking those questions and sitting with it, the answers start popping up and you're like, whoa. So I would look into that kind of stuff. Body scanning can definitely be valuable, for sure. I think energy work is probably good, like some kind of yoga or qigong or whatever, that kind of thing can probably be helpful. And I think always working in the senses is good, like stanzas as you were describing, just feeling, seeing, hearing, just spending time in the senses, but really being careful to not continue to encourage some seeking that's going to get me to some magical place called non-duality. It won't feel like that. It'll feel like you drop into your body is what it'll feel like.
Okay.
Little by little. So
All right.
hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, it is. Thanks.
Right on, man. I love your story, by the way, when you were a kid, but I know that's crazy to go through.
Yeah, it was.
It sets up a kind of life that most people can't really relate to.
It really, yeah, it really ruined it, to be quite honest, because it ruined it. It was just like, it destroyed everything.
That may be something to look into. We won't get into it here, but that might be something to look into. Like that child may have developed, or that preteen or whatever may have developed this total aversion to this, almost like an anger at it. I have met people, one or two people who had spontaneous awakenings with no spiritual anything at very young ages. And at least one of them, there was a massive amount of resentment. Actually, I didn't ask for this. I didn't want this. And yet it changed everything about me, changed my life, et cetera. So there could actually be the part of you that says, I want this so bad, could also be fooling itself a little bit, because underneath it, there's a part of you that may not actually, that's like, no. But understand that part of you that says no to it was not ready for it. You're inhabiting a different situation now. You're an adult. You're inhabiting a body mind that has the capacity for it now. So of course it's okay, but there may be some cognitive dissonance in there about it, and so that's something else to look into.
Okay.
All right, my friend. Thank you so much for your question. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, everyone. I think we're right on time. Okay. So I think we have poetry coming up in a little while. If anyone wants to come to poetry, read song lyrics, listen, anything, we're doing it at 1940 Mountain Time or 7:40 p.m. Mountain Time. So that's all. Thank you very much for all your questions. I'm going to end the session so I can render the video and then I'll open it back up.